Okay, let's unpack this. Today we are doing a deep dive into a history that, well, it completely reshaped the foundations of the Caribbean.
Mm,
We're talking about the unexpected and, frankly, profoundly tenacious story of the Jewish community in Jamaica.
yeah, it really is.
This is a journey that starts with just brutal expulsion in 15th century Europe, navigates secret havens, and ends up etching this massive cultural and commercial legacy onto an island far across the sea.
And the central question we're exploring really is one of survival and adaptation. How did a population fleeing the sheer violence of the Spanish Inquisition manage to establish a foothold in a New World colony
Right.
and then thrive under subsequent British rule, even with resistance, and leave behind this huge genetic footprint? We're talking estimates covering hundreds of thousands of people today.
Wow.
Our sources today, they track this whole timeline pretty much from the Spanish arrival in the 1500s right up through the modern era.
It's a story defined almost entirely by a terrifying push factor, isn't it? To understand the Jamaican community, we absolutely have to start back in Spain, late 1400s.
Hmm.
We are talking about the reinstitution of the Inquisition, which had been originally set up way earlier but was revived to rid the country of heretics.
That's right. King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella had basically made it their mission to restore Spain entirely to Christian rule. By 1478, the Inquisition was in full swing.
And really focus on Jews.
Yeah, focused on rooting out anyone suspected of practicing Judaism in secret.
Yeah.
And the methods used were, well, they were absolutely violent and horrifying.
And this all sort of culminates in that defining year, 1392. Everyone connects 1492 with Columbus, obviously.
Of course.
But it was also the year that Granada fell, marking the complete Christian reconquest of Spain. And then just months later, March 31st, Ferdinand and Isabella issued the Alhambra Decree.
And this decree was the legal hammer, really, that forced the migration. It mandated the expulsion of all Jews from the country, just banished them from every realm under the crown.
And they were given just 4 months.
Just 4 months to liquidate their entire lives and leave.
4 months to sell everything you owned. I mean, think about the immediate human consequence of that.
It's staggering.
People had to hastily sell property, businesses, assets at impossibly deflated prices, usually to their Catholic neighbors. They were forced into just impossible choices. And the choices were stark: emigration or conversion. Many chose to remain in Spain by converting to Catholicism. These are the conversos.
Okay.
But, and this is key, historical evidence shows that a massive number of them converted outwardly only. They continued practicing Jewish rituals in secret. These are the crypto-Jews.
And here is where our narrative links directly to the Caribbean. It's a pretty amazing historical detail, actually.
Mhm.
The opening lines of Columbus's own diary mention the expulsion decree. He writes that the order to expel all Jews and the order for him to sail for the Indies were issued in the exact same month.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that explicit in his diary. Yeah, so the New World suddenly became this terrifying, yet maybe possible destination for these exiles.
And that really set the stage for the first arrivals in Jamaica. The earliest Jewish presence traces back to the early 1530s, specifically in Spanish Town.
Okay, so pretty early on.
Very early. And these were primarily Portuguese crypto-Jews fleeing the Inquisition's increasing ferocity. They were looking for a safer refuge within Spanish territories, ironically.
Right, even though Spain itself was the source of the persecution.
Exactly.
That initial fear of the Inquisition, though, it raises a huge question. How did they manage to find safety, not just anywhere, but under the very flag that sought to persecute them? That sounds risky.
It does, but it involves this fascinating legal loophole. It's critical context, really.
Okay.
During the early 1500s, the relationship between the Columbus family and the Spanish crown was extremely strained. There were all these legal disputes over his titles and territories.
Right.
In a settlement, Spain essentially ceded control of Jamaica to the Columbus family.
So the island wasn't entirely under direct crown control at that point.
Precisely. And in 1530, Christopher Columbus's grandson, Portugallo Colon, used this autonomy. He made the crucial decision to, well, defy the Inquisition's policies and allowed Jews to settle in Jamaica.
He basically created an unofficial safe zone.
That's a good way to put it. While open practice was still restricted, it was technically a Catholic colony. After all, Colon effectively turned a blind eye to private religious rituals.
So they could not practice in secret.
Yes, they could practice Jewish traditions in secret without that immediate paralyzing fear of being seized and tortured by the Inquisition's agents, which was happening everywhere else in the Spanish sphere.
So a degree of safety, at least.
Measure of security, yeah. These early settlers, the Sephardim, meaning Jews of Spanish and Portuguese origin, they formed the foundation of the community. They were living in this constant state of dual identity, but maybe for the first time in decades, they had some breathing room.
But the real pivot, the moment they could finally come out of the shadows,
Yeah.
that was 1655. That's when the English captured Jamaica from the Spanish.
Yeah, that single military event fundamentally changed religious freedom on the island. The English, being Protestant, were just far more tolerant of non-Catholic sects than the Spanish were.
So suddenly, things changed drastically.
Instantly, the crypto-Jews were allowed to worship in public, own property, and eventually gain full citizenship. The doors swung open.
And the community just exploded, right?
Mm-hmm.
We see this massive inflow of Sephardic Jews immigrating from England, from Brazil.
Yeah, after the Dutch lost control there.
Right, and from other South American colonies too.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't waste any time. They established synagogues, schools, markets, really putting down deep roots. And speaking of adapting to the local environment, the sources point to one of the most, well, surprising facts of this era: the emergence of Jewish pirates. Okay, Jewish pirates. Now, this is where the history gets really interesting.
It does, doesn't it?
And we're not talking about minor figures either. Individuals like Moses Cohen Henrique, a Dutch pirate of Portuguese Sephardic Jewish origin, they were active, operating out of Port Royal.
Yeah, it adds this entirely different sort of swashbuckling layer to the idea of resilience and adaptation, doesn't it?
Definitely.
It provides some context for their flight, too. I mean, if you were exiled from Spain, persecuted by the Spanish church, turning to piracy, often against Spanish galleons, well, it was maybe an act of economic necessity.
And maybe a little bit of revenge.
And perhaps deep-seated revenge, exactly. They were turning the tables on their persecutors, using the English colonial structure as their base of operations.
But despite these newfound freedoms under the British, this growth and their commercial success didn't go unchallenged. It quickly bred resistance from other colonists.
Almost immediately, yeah. Anti-Jewish sentiment flared up. In 1671, the British authorities were actually petitioned by other citizens to expel the Jews from the island.
Oh, did that happen?
No, that measure failed, thankfully. But targeted restrictions soon followed, clearly intended to handicap their success.
What kind of restrictions are we talking about? Specific things?
Yeah, specific punitive laws were implemented in 1693. The community was hit with a special, disproportionate tax compared to other citizens. They were forbidden from using Christian servants, required to work on the Sabbath, which was a clear, targeted attempt to disrupt their religious observance.
Right, hitting them where it hurts culturally.
Exactly. And later they were prohibited from holding public office. It was basically economic warfare masked as regulation.
That's just cruel. They gained freedom from the Spanish Inquisition only to face this targeted punitive environment from the British. But what's fascinating here, and you mentioned this earlier, is that despite all of that, the community continued to thrive.
Their success seems almost unstoppable when you read about it. They increased in population, increased their commercial dominance, just showing remarkable persistence.
Key industries.
Yeah, they were crucial in developing key industries like sugar and vanilla, and they played a leading role in foreign trade and shipping enterprises across the Caribbean and back to Europe.
So this economic power, it eventually translated into political power and rights.
It did. The community kept expanding in the late 1700s, with new waves of immigrants coming in from places like Curacao and Germany, which diversified the population a bit more.
Okay.
And this expansion ultimately led to the hard-won recognition of full political rights. In 1831, Jews on the island were granted full political rights and equal legal status.
Including the right to vote.
Including the ability to vote and attain property. It was a massive step towards full integration.
And their influence immediately became, well, foundational to Jamaica's identity in many ways.
Yeah.
A huge cultural contribution we see is the founding of the Jamaica Gleaner newspaper in 1834.
Right, by the brothers Jacob and Joshua de Cordova.
And it's still one of the most essential newspapers in the Caribbean today.
Yeah.
That's quite a legacy.
It really is. And commercially, their reach became truly international. The sources point to the establishment of this international family business run by the Schloss brothers. They were encouraged to settle by George Steeble's father, apparently, and they set up this trade network that spanned Kingston, Bogota, Frankfurt, Manchester, London.
Wow, so really global.
They weren't just running a local business, they were driving global commerce from Jamaica.
Now, as we move into the 20th century, we see this sort of political peak. But then an inevitable decline sets in.
That's right. At the turn of the century, there was another surge of immigrants arriving, this time from Syria, Egypt, and Germany, further enriching the community.
hmm Their political influence peaked impressively around 1949. Get this, 8 Jewish members were serving in the House of Assembly, including the Speaker of the House. 8 members. That's huge representation for a minority group.
It's quite disproportionate, yeah. But then the numbers began to drop significantly. Immigration and assimilation started taking their toll.
You mentioned faltering prosperity earlier. Can we dig into that? What specific economic shifts were driving this exodus?
Yeah, it was a combination of factors, really. The traditional economic engines where the Jewish community had held dominance, think colonial sugar trade, shipping enterprises, they began losing competitiveness globally.
Okay, so broader economic changes.
Right. And as economic opportunities started centralizing more in the U.S. and Europe, younger generations naturally followed those prospects. Many emigrated to places like New York, London.
And that drain was significant enough that the community actually had to consolidate.
It was. The decline was so pronounced that the 2 distinct synagogues, the Sephardic community, tracing its roots back to Spain and Portugal, and the Ashkenazi community, with roots in Eastern Europe and Germany, they were actually forced to merge in 1921.
Just due to falling numbers.
Due to the population decline, yeah.
So compared to other minority groups in Jamaica today, like, say, the East Indians or Chinese, the practicing Jewish community is quite small and concentrated now.
Relatively small, yes.
And this is the massive kind of hidden legacy that really connects the past to the present, isn't it?
This is the truly powerful takeaway, I think. While the practicing population has dramatically dwindled, the genetic and historical influence remains absolutely enormous.
Okay.
It's estimated that nearly 424,000 Jamaicans today are descendants of those Sephardic Jewish immigrants who came to the island centuries ago.
Wait, 424,000? How do we even arrive at that number? That sounds almost too large to believe given the size of the practicing community now.
It sounds huge, I know. It's based on careful genealogical tracing, surname analysis, and also DNA studies, which reveal just how broad the assimilation was over centuries.
Oh, okay.
Remember, these immigrants started arriving in the 1530s, 1600s. Their descendants mixed and intermarried across various ethnic groups on the island for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Right, over a very long period.
Exactly. The initial population might have been small, but the time frame was vast. That allowed this specific ancestry to just permeate the national identity, often silently.
What an incredible journey when you lay it out like that. From forced conversion and exile under the Alhambra Decree to finding that peculiar haven under the Columbus family's protection, turning to piracy, achieving massive commercial success despite targeted restrictions, and eventually gaining full political influence. It's just a remarkable textbook case of adaptation.
And it connects this specific Caribbean history to that much broader theme of global migration, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This shows how religious persecution in 15th century Spain directly shaped not only the lives of the Sephardim, but also the economic, the political, and even the genetic structure of a major Caribbean island hundreds of years later.
The enduring demographic impact is just astounding. Given that figure, over 400,000 Jamaicans estimated to carry Sephardic Jewish ancestry today. What does this tell us about the persistence of identity, about the hidden foundations of national cultures, and the idea that history truly refuses to be forgotten?
It really makes you think.
That hidden ancestry means the narrative of that 1492 expulsion, in a way, is still subtly defining the lives and heritage of hundreds of thousands of people in the Caribbean today. That is a history well worth digging into.